Hello, and welcome to GP Podcast. Tonight, we're going somewhere a little different. We're stepping into the digital shadows, into the very memory of the machines we talk to every single day. We're about to uncover the silent, unseen world of artificial intelligence.
I want you to think about this question for a second. Does that chatbot you use, that AI assistant, does it remember your secrets? It seems like a simple question, right? But the answer is, well, it's a lot more complicated and maybe a little more unsettling than you might think. So in this explainer, we are diving deep. We're going to follow the trail of digital breadcrumbs our own data leaves behind.
So let's start at the beginning. Where does an AI even get a memory? I mean, it's not like a computer's hard drive. It all comes down to how these incredibly powerful tools are made in the first place.
Okay, so large language models, the brains behind things like ChatGPT, they are trained on just a mind-boggling amount of information scraped from the internet. We are talking about a huge chunk of the public web. Books, articles, forums, and yeah, even private, sensitive data that was never ever meant to be part of an AI's education. And this creates a really critical problem. The AI is supposed to learn general ideas from all this data, but what happens when it stops learning and starts memorizing specific facts, specific names, numbers, secrets? That's exactly where the privacy risk comes.
To figure out if an AI has actually memorized something, researchers have this amazing tool. It's like a digital forensics kit. It's called a membership inference attack, or MIA. You could just think of it as a detective's fingerprint kit for data. If an MIA is successful, it's direct, solid proof that an AI has held on to a piece of information that it was never, ever supposed to keep.
So, how does this digital detective actually go about its work? Well, for years, the way these investigations were done was pretty straightforward. But as we're about to find out, it had a huge blind spot.
So, the classic method involves taking two versions of an AI. First, you've got the target model, which has been fine-tuned on a specific, private set of data we want to check. And then you have a reference model, which is just the original off-the-shelf version. The whole game is to see if the target model acts differently when it sees a certain piece of data. If it does, well, that's our first big clue that it recognizes it.
And how do we measure that reaction? The key signal is a metric called loss. The easiest way to think about loss is as a measure of the AI's surprise. See, when a model sees data that it was trained on, what we call a member of its training set, it's not very surprised at all. It's familiar territory, and that means it has a lower loss score. So a consistently low score is a pretty strong hint that the AI actually remembers that specific piece of data.
And here's the crucial part about the old way of doing things. The method was to take that surprise level for every single word or token in a document, and then just average it all together. This gives you one single number for the entire text, but this has a huge hidden flaw. It's kind of like trying to hear a single whisper by just measuring the average volume of an entire roaring football stadium. You're just going to miss it. And this leads us to the real breakthrough at the heart of this new research. It turns out the real clues, the smoking guns of memorization, they weren't at all where everybody was looking. What the researchers figured out is that the evidence of memorization isn't some loud, constant hum that you can just average out. No, it's much more like a faint, scattered heartbeat. These signals are what they call sparse extremal events. They're tiny, little isolated spikes of recognition that are hidden all throughout the text. The old method of just averaging everything together, it was completely drowning them out.
This slide really just lays it out perfectly. The problem is noise. See, when you fine-tune an AI on a specific subject, let's say medical records, it gets really good at predicting common medical terms. These domain-specific tokens create these really loud signals, very low surprise, but they show up in all the medical records, not just the one specific record the AI might have memorized. This domain adaptation creates a ton of noise that completely buries the subtle real signals of actual memorization.
So to find these faint heartbeats and all that noise, the researchers needed a new tool, something way more sensitive, a whole new way to build a better detector.
And so, they developed a brand new technique called the window-based comparison attack, or WBC. Now, instead of looking at the whole document all at once, this method works more like a magnifying glass, scanning the text piece by piece, looking for those tiny, hidden signals.
The logic behind it is actually brilliantly simple.
First, it still calculates that surprise difference for every single token, just like before. But then, and this is the key, instead of averaging it all, it slides a small window of just a few tokens across the entire text. And here is the really clever part. For each little window, it doesn't care how much more confident the target model is. It only asks a simple yes or no question.
Is it more confident? That's it. This is called the sign test. By just counting the yes answers, it completely ignores those huge, noisy spikes from the general topic, and it zeroes in on the faint but consistent signals of true memorization.
So, the big question is, how much better is this new magnifying glass really? Well, the results are, frankly, they're pretty astonishing.
What does this number, 2.8x, actually mean? It means that, on average, this new WBC attack is 2.8 times better at correctly identifying a piece of memorized data than the best methods we had before, especially when you really need to be sure you're not making false accusations. It is a massive leap forward in our ability to detect these things.
Now, this chart shows a more technical way of looking at it, the AUC score. All you need to know is that a higher number is better. And if you look at that bottom row, the WBC attack, which is highlighted in bold, you can see it consistently and significantly beats the old baseline methods across all these different kinds of data sets. It's not even close.
Of course, this all leads to a kind of cat and mouse game, right? What about defenses? Well, things like differential privacy, which basically adds statistical noise to the training, and LoRa, which limits how much the AI can change, they do help. But even with those defenses in place, WBC is still way more effective than the older attacks. The only defense that really seemed to work well was something called selective obfuscation, or SOFT, which rephrases parts of the training data. So this just shows that the privacy challenge is a lot harder than we thought, and our defenses really need to get smarter.
And this quote from the researchers themselves really just says it all. By looking for small, local clues instead of one big global signal, they found a much more powerful way to find these ghosts in the machine.
So the huge takeaway here is that this research really changes how we have to think about AI privacy. It proves that memorization is happening on a much smaller, more subtle level than we ever realized. And it leaves us with a really provocative and maybe a little unsettling question for the future. As these AIs get smarter and smarter, can our secrets ever really truly be safe? If you liked the video, subscribe, leave a like, comment on what you liked most, and share the video. Thanks for joining me.